Change feels like something that keeps hovering over Baltimore, almost like it is sitting in the room even when nobody wants to say it out loud. There is a growing sense that the organization has reached one of those moments where standing still might actually mean moving backward. And that feeling does not come from one bad game or one frustrating stretch, but from a pattern that has slowly taken shape over multiple seasons. When conversations turn to the coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball, it becomes clear that continuity for the sake of continuity may no longer be enough to satisfy a team that still believes it should be competing for championships, not just playoff spots. The idea that everything could simply run back exactly the same has started to feel unrealistic, even inside league circles. There is an understanding that teams rarely go through disappointing endings without at least questioning whether the voices leading the locker room are still resonating the same way. Sometimes it is not about someone being bad at their job, but about alignment, about whether everyone is pulling in the same direction with the same vision. When that alignment starts to crack, even slightly, it can lead to bigger issues down the road, especially when expectations are as high as they are in Baltimore. On offense, the discussion quickly becomes complicated. The coordinator has been one of the more creative minds the team has had in recent years, and that is not an exaggeration. The numbers back it up, but so does the eye test. This offense has shown the ability to adjust to personnel, to lean into the strengths of the quarterback, and to find ways to produce even when injuries and instability along the offensive line made consistency difficult. There were stretches where the offense looked unstoppable, capable of controlling tempo and wearing teams down in multiple ways. At the same time, frustration has built because those highs have not always been sustained. Slow starts have been an issue, followed at times by puzzling lulls where momentum simply vanished. There were games where it felt like the offense hit the accelerator early, only to lift off at moments when putting the foot down could have closed the door completely. Those sequences stick with fans because they feel self-inflicted. And in a league where margins are thin, that perception matters. Still, when you zoom out and look at the full picture, it is hard to argue that the offense has been anything close to a failure over multiple seasons. Baltimore consistently ranked near the top of the league in both rushing and passing production. Finishing among the best units year after year is not accidental, especially when quarterback changes, injuries, and personnel turnover are factored in. That level of output suggests a system that works, even if it is not flawless. That is why the idea of moving on from the offensive coordinator, while keeping everything else intact, feels risky. It raises the question of whether the organization would be fixing the right problem or simply making a change to show that something was done. Swapping out coordinators has been a familiar cycle here before, and each time it comes with the same hope that a new scheme or a new voice will be the missing piece. But when the cycle keeps repeating, it becomes fair to ask whether the root of the issue lies somewhere higher up. Defensively, the conversation carries a different tone. There has been progress, but it has often come after slow starts that put the team in a hole early in the season. Adjustments have been made, sometimes with the help of more experienced voices brought in to stabilize things. Yet the same concerns keep resurfacing. Soft coverage, inconsistent pass rush timing, and lapses in discipline have all shown up too frequently for a unit that is supposed to be a backbone of the team's identity. Injuries and roster limitations are part of the story, especially when key pass rushers went down and depth was tested. Every team deals with that, but the best defenses find ways to adapt faster. When it takes weeks or even months to settle into an effective rhythm, it puts added pressure on the offense and on the team as a whole. Over the seasons, that pattern has become harder to ignore. All of this circles back to the head coach, because ultimately, that is where accountability lands. Preparation, discipline, execution, and consistency are responsibilities that do not belong to coordinators alone. Penalties, sloppy moments, and failure to close tight games add up, and over time they shape how a coach is perceived. Regardless of past success, this is not about denying what has been accomplished before, but about questioning whether the current approach is still capable of delivering what the organization says it wants most. The Ravens have not lacked talent, especially with a franchise quarterback in his prime. That reality makes repeated early exits and missed opportunities feel heavier. When the same names keep appearing in discussions about change, and the same debates resurface year after year, it can create fatigue among fans and players alike. At some point, belief starts to erode, not because effort is missing, But because results no longer match expectations, there is also the risk of taking a half step instead of a decisive one. Making a coordinator change without addressing the bigger picture can feel like delaying an outcome. Rather than shaping a new direction, it can buy time. But it can also deepen frustration if the underlying issues remain. For a team that insists it wants to win now, those choices send a message, whether intended or not, about what standards truly matter. As the offseason unfolds, every move, or lack of a move, will be scrutinized through that lens. Whether the Ravens choose continuity, partial change, or a complete reset, the implications will stretch far beyond a single season. The direction they choose will say a lot about how they view their window, their leadership, and the kind of future they believe is still possible with this core. When you look deeper at this situation, it becomes less about individual play calls and more about direction. Organizations that stay competitive for a long time usually recognize when their message starts to lose sharpness, even if the overall results still look respectable on paper. Winning seasons and playoff appearances can mask deeper problems, especially when expectations are higher than simply being relevant. In Baltimore, the standard has always been about contending at the very top, and that is why the current crossroads feels heavier than a typical off-season debate. The question that keeps coming back is whether the team is truly evolving or just reshuffling pieces. Around the same core structure, changing coordinators can create the illusion of progress. But if the philosophical approach stays the same, the ceiling may not move. Fans have seen this pattern before, where a new coordinator arrives, brings a fresh wrinkle or two, and then eventually runs into the same walls that existed before. When that keeps happening, it forces an uncomfortable conversation about leadership and adaptability at the highest level. Offensive lie. There is a strong argument that stability should actually be valued more than disruption. The system in place has proven it can succeed under difficult circumstances. Quarterback injuries, offensive line inconsistency, and rotating skill position roles did not completely derail production. That level of resilience usually points to good structure and intelligent design. While there are fair critiques about tempo management and situational decisions, those issues often feel correctable rather than fatal. That is why removing the offensive coordinator could feel like sacrificing one of the team's clearer strengths in exchange for uncertainty. Any new hire would need time to implement concepts, build trust with players, and adjust to the quarterback style. In a league that moves quickly, that adjustment period can cost valuable momentum. For a roster that believes it should be competing immediately, patience might not be an easy sell inside the building. Defensively, patience has already been tested. The unit has shown flashes, especially as seasons progressed, but the early struggles have been too consistent to ignore. Starting slow puts pressure on every other phase of the game, and often forces the offense into uncomfortable situations. Even when improvements came, they sometimes felt reactive rather than proactive, as if solutions were found only after damage had already been done. Discipline has also remained a lingering issue. Missed tackles, poorly timed penalties, and coverage breakdowns at critical moments have defined too many losses. These are the kinds of mistakes that separate good teams from great ones, and they tend to reflect preparation and emphasis as much as talent. Over time, those patterns shape narratives, and narratives influence confidence, both internally and externally. The head coach sits at the center of all of this. Longevity brings respect, but it also brings scrutiny. When the same problems resurface across different coordinators and different rosters, it becomes harder to pin everything on assistants alone. Close games, in particular, have been a sore spot. Struggling to consistently win tight contests points to issues with situational football, late game management, and overall composure. Those moments often define seasons more than blowouts ever do. This is where the conversation shifts from performance to belief. A locker room can sense when change is coming, just as it can sense when leadership is holding on to familiar ground. Players may never say it publicly, but energy and urgency are affected by whether they feel the organization is willing to make bold decisions. If the message becomes that staying good is acceptable, it risks dulling the edge that championship teams need. There is also the broader league context to consider. Other franchises have shown a willingness to move on from successful coaches when the trajectory felt stagnant. Those decisions are never easy, and they always come with risk. But they are often driven by a belief that timing matters. Waiting too long can mean wasting prime years of elite talent. And Baltimore understands better than most how rare those windows can be. Ownership plays a critical role here as well. The commitment to winning now has been stated before, but actions speak louder than words. Standing by leadership can be seen as loyalty, but it can also be interpreted as complacency if results plateau. The choice between those interpretations depends entirely on what happens next. One decisive move can change the tone of an entire offseason. Right now, uncertainty defines the atmosphere. Rumors and speculation fill the gaps left by silence, and every report is dissected for clues about the future, whether changes come on offense, defense, or at the top. The impact will be felt immediately. This is not a situation where minor tweaks are likely to satisfy a restless fan base or reset expectations internally as the Ravens move forward. They are not just deciding who stays and who goes, they are deciding what kind of organization they want to be in the next phase of this era. Do they double down on familiarity and hope experience eventually breaks through? Or do they embrace disruption in search of a new spark? That choice will define how this team approaches preparation, accountability, and ambition in the seasons ahead. And it will shape every conversation that follows from this point forward. That decision also carries weight because of how the rest of the roster is built right now. This is not a team quietly rebuilding or stockpiling assets for some distant future. The core is experienced, the expectations inside the building are immediate, and the margin for patience is thin. Every offseason move is judged by whether it maximizes the current window or wastes another year searching for answers that never fully arrive. When leadership hesitates at moments like this, it can create a disconnect between what the roster believes it is capable of and what the organization is actually willing to do to support that belief. There is also the psychological aspect that often gets overlooked. Confidence in a team does not only come from talent or schemes, but from clarity. Players want to know what the plan is, who is in charge of executing it, and whether accountability truly applies to everyone. When seasons end the same way and explanations start to sound familiar, that clarity can blur. Over time, even small doubts can affect preparation, urgency, and trust, especially when the stakes rise late in the year. Ultimately, this moment feels like one where hesitation could be just as impactful as action. Choosing to maintain the status quo sends a message, just as choosing to change course does. One says that the belief remains unchanged, that the answer is already in the building. The other admits that something fundamental needs to shift, even if the risk is uncomfortable. How the Ravens navigate this stretch will echo far beyond this offseason, shaping expectations, pressure, and belief long before the next kickoff ever arrives. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. The NFL world is buzzing with shock and speculation after the Baltimore Ravens reportedly pulled off one of the most unexpected moves of the offseason. DEEBO Samuel is now, allegedly, in Baltimore. Sources close to the organization hint at a deal that could reshape the Ravens' offensive identity, turning one of the league's most dynamic and versatile weapons into the centerpiece of their attack. Known for his rare combination of speed, power, and elusiveness, Samuel has terrorized defenses from the West Coast to the East, and now, whispers suggest he could bring that same chaos to the AFC North. For years, Baltimore has been defined by a disciplined, hard-nosed approach, relying on a physical run game and strategic aerial assaults. Yet the thought of Samuel joining forces with Lamar Jackson's improvisational genius opens the door to a tantalizingly unpredictable offense. Could the Ravens finally unlock a dual threat that leaves linebackers and safeties guessing on every snap? Analysts are already debating how the team might deploy him split out wide to stretch defenses, motion into the backfield, or lining up in creative packages that maximize his unique skill set. Every scenario seems designed to exploit mismatches. And that's exactly the kind of headache NFL coordinators dread. Fans are divided between excitement and cautious optimism. Some see the move as a bold statement, signaling Baltimore's intent to chase Super Bowl contention with a roster that blends veteran savvy and explosive athleticism. Others question the fit. Samuel's high-usage style demands a finely tuned offensive line and a quarterback willing to take risks, and while Jackson has proven capable of magic, integrating such a singular talent is never without its challenges. Rumors of new schemes, play designs, and even position shifts swirl around social media, feeding the speculation like wildfire. Still, one thing is clear: the mere suggestion that DEEBO Samuel could roam the Ravens' offense is enough to send shivers down opposing defenses if the reports hold any truth. Baltimore may have just acquired a player whose presence alone forces game plans to be rewritten on the fly, and while the league waits for official confirmation, the imagination runs wild. Breakaway runs, highlight reel catches, and an offense that becomes as unpredictable as it is lethal. The NFL landscape might never see the same balance in the AFC North. Again, that's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.